I stand right now, everything is crashing down, and I wonder where you are. I try to find the words to pray, I don't always know what to say, but you're the one that can hear my heart. And even though I don't know what your plan is, I know you make beauty from these ashes. I've seen joy, I've seen pain, on my knees I call your name. Here's my broken hallelujah. With nothing left to hold on to, I raise these empty hands to you. Here's my broken, here's my broken hallelujah. Hallelujah. You know the things that have brought me here, you know the story of every tear, 'cause you've been here from the very start. And even though I don't know what your plan is, I know you make beauty from these ashes. I've seen joy, I've seen pain, and on my knees I call your name. Here's my broken hallelujah. Nothing left to hold on to, I raise these empty hands to you. Here's my broken, here's my broken hallelujah. 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 When I was taken away, don't let my heart be changed. Let me always sing hallelujah. And when I feel afraid, don't let my hope be erased. Let me always sing, let me always sing hallelujah. 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 I will always sing, I will always sing. Here's my broken, here's my broken hallelujah. I will always sing, I will always sing. Here's my broken, here's my broken hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Taken from the letter of Galatians chapter 5 verses 13 through 15. For dear brothers and sisters, you've been given freedom. Not freedom to do wrong, but freedom to love and serve each other. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love others as you love yourself. But if instead of showing love among yourselves, you're always critical and catty, watch out. Beware of ruining each other. As we do come together on this day, before the annual celebration of our country's birth, its beginning, we know persons are preparing for the gathering of family. the sharing of food and festivities, culminating with fireworks across the country. And so I take a few moments this morning asking us, before embarking on those annual festivals, to just take a few moments and reflect on the most important freedom that you and I have in this life and beyond. The eternal freedom from sin, thanks to the sacrifice given us by God. Freedom in any of our lives, from the smallest thing to the greatest, always comes with a price. The perfect example being Jesus giving his life, for us in order to be free from sin. The very reason that we gather each week to worship and to share that great hope, that help for everyone within our communities and beyond. And tomorrow, we're going to be reminded, as every year, the price that persons paid for us to have that opportunity. And I believe it's important. It's critical for you, for me, to begin our celebration of freedom today by recalling the greatest freedom of all that we have been offered through Jesus fighting that great spiritual war for you and me. So that any who desire to have inner spiritual freedom can have one, as I mentioned to the kids, through a partnership between each of us and with God. But to do so means that we must never forget the price others paid for our freedom, physically, spiritually. That's why I've always believed in the importance of bringing our secular celebration of freedom into the world of the spiritual here. Learning of freedom and its importance is a powerful force for both the self as well as for all of our society, as a teacher of our son learned the hard and embarrassing way many years ago. It happened in his junior year. His social studies class. Students were focusing on World War II. As part of the class assignments, our son had finished a project interviewing his maternal grandfather, Meg's dad, who had enlisted for the war, World War. Huh? He will. He'd enlisted for the war, even though potentially exempt because of his being a farmer. And now, during his tour, he was in the Pacific, and as he shared with us, was part of several suicide missions, and one of those, in fact, was a rescue mission of the internment camp established by the Japanese for all the civilians, mostly Americans. The place was named Santo Tomas. The most harrowing experience he shared was the night before the invasion of Japan. As he shared, he told of the night before the invasion. He and his shipmates were told, write letters home before the morning invasion. Meg's dad wrote his letter, letting family know the impending blitz on the shore of Japan and the probability that he was never coming home. Imagine writing that letter home. Imagine yourself in that position, having to spend those hours waiting, wondering. Well, our son knew of those events in Grandpa's life, and he was sitting in the class. Now, I'm going to let my son tell you what happened.
I'm a teacher, this is so kind of odd sometimes. This is during the, as my dad said, as I'm in that age where I'm starting to, be a little bit more braver in the classroom, be able to kind of question a little bit more and be more, speak up a little bit. And I had a teacher at the time. He was a wonderful teacher, but he was also a teacher who would talk about these stories and would offer an opinion, a very strong opinion about his stance on the whole thing, and would also kind of say, this is what you should think, which is always a challenge, especially when you're a high schooler and you're wanting to go left when they say right, go up when they say down. We were studying World War II, and yeah, as my dad said, I heard a lot of these stories, spent a lot of Thanksgivings with my grandfather as he would tell these stories. And his stance was, we should not have dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Now, that's what the teacher said, and he was very adamant in this classroom about how wrong this was, and putting political opinions aside, you know, whether you agree, whether you don't agree, you know, I did the same thing. Putting aside, I raised my hand, I said, but I wouldn't be here if they had not done that. And I very vividly remember my teacher pausing because he didn't know what to say. And again, it's funny, I have this video still to this day of interviewing my grandfather, of him telling these stories, which is, as a filmmaker, is a beautiful thing to have. Always film family members telling stories. You will treasure it for years.
Not your parents.
No. But again, it was such a unique moment that we stood there in silence, of him wanting to know what to say to me, what's the right thing to say, and as a teacher now, years later, I feel more for him than I did then. But that was my whole point. I wouldn't be listening to you right now if that decision had not been made. So why are you telling me it was wrong? And again, again, opinions aside of the whole thing, it was just a very unique moment. And what I vividly remember is, the teacher saying, "Well, come talk to me after class." And then he and I had a really good 20-minute conversation of just the debate of the whole thing, and where I stood on the whole thing, and it's okay to have that opinion, but also to think about these things. And so it was just a moment in time, though, to really think about, well, those decisions, those sacrifices that my grandfather made, him writing that letter. I still, to this day, I get goosebumps right now thinking of him writing that letter to my grandma. And that's really a really hard time to think about. And then just being in class thinking, I couldn't be hearing this right now if he had not written that letter. Thank you very much.
It's easy for all of us when we're in a situation where we assume that it's not personal to those who are listening. It's so easy to forget that you don't know to whom it may be personal and not. And it was so interesting that as our son told us, after he got done sharing what he just shared with you, saying to the teacher, actually, he didn't do that whole long speech to his teacher. As he told it to us when he came home, he said, "But if they hadn't dropped the bomb, my grandpa wouldn't be here today." He said the teacher just walked back to his desk and the class moved on and dropped it. I share all of this, as well as my son, and I thank him for doing that, because of one of the early moments in our country. Following the Revolutionary War and our break from that English rule, we began our brand of governance, yes. One of those changes being a limited 4-year, 8-year maximum presidency of one person. One of those early presidents, Thomas Jefferson, shortly after being elected, received a note of congratulations from the Danbury Baptist Association in Connecticut, where Jefferson was very popular, who were asking him to declare, after what was a very vicious presidential campaign, and any of you who have read history know that our campaigns here are nothing compared to what happened in the early years of our country. During that vicious presidential campaign, they asked, could we declare a national day of fasting, as was a common practice in England at the time? The president wrote back a letter of thanks, and he then shared his personal thoughts regarding the concept of fasting. He knew it was important to maintain that sense of freedom for all aspects of life, including our practice of faith. and reminded them how the government position was to maintain the distinction between government actions and personal spiritual action, and that was why there was a law which said the government shall, quote, make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. That was the letter where that phrase came from. I know there are many today who've interpreted those words to say that Jefferson was opposed to religion, that he didn't believe in God, and that he wanted religion out of our nation. Nice try, but I don't believe that at all. Jefferson was president, and he was human. And like all of us, we have both the understanding of the biblical foundations of life as well as our personal perspectives of life and functioning in our surroundings. And each and every one of us has to find some way to mesh those two worlds together. We live in a country where we have the freedom to live our faith in ways which bring meaning to life, yes. To exercise our thoughts and our reflections about our faith, not others' faith, our faith, without the fear of imprisonment or death, which allows others to hear and follow, or disagree and either decide to learn about God for themselves, hence all the different denominations, or ignore faith altogether. This perspective allows you and me as believers to be able to share our positions, freedom of speech, our theology, freedom of religion, our inner spiritual sense with others without fear, and if there is a positive response, wonderful. And if not, share and let God's Spirit impact them in God's time. In contrast to prior to our founding, if you didn't believe as they believed, you were killed. That's what Paul meant in his writing of today's words from the New Testament to the church in Galatia. For dear brothers and sisters, you've been given freedom. Not freedom to do wrong, but freedom to love and serve each other. For the whole law can be summed up in one command: love others as you love yourself. But if instead of showing love among yourselves, you're always critical and catty, watch out. Beware of ruining each other. That's the true freedom that we have in our lives. To care, to share, and to do so without the fear of human law threatening us. There are persons in our lives, our communities, our personal world of daily activities. They're living by rules and regulations and laws and contracts, social and personal, limiting what he or she can do, and they are unhappy because of life's challenges and frustrations. And if you want to see a perfect example, anybody here raised a teenager? You'll know what I'm talking about. As they're working through that struggle and coming to that understanding. They're wanting the freedom to be themselves, to experience more in life than what we call that daily grind. How do they find freedom in their lives? By turning to the source who gave up true freedom for you and me. That's where they find it. Surrender the shackles to the shackles and the shame of human sin for no other than you and me. Turn to Jesus, God in human form. Jesus died, rose for you, for me, to have that gift, that opportunity. Our country was founded and formed on that premise. Today we celebrate the establishment of the great gift of freedom, including freedom of the soul. if we want it. Rejoice and celebrate such inner commitment and such spirit in lives, including yours. Amen.
Until I rise like the morning, wake up in the arms of glory, to finally see the sun above the pouring rain. Until I fall into surrender,